Ever heard of a battle so disastrous the general in charge tried to erase it from history? Today we're diving into the untold story of the Battle of the Scheldt, the bloody conflict Field Marshal Montgomery never wanted you to study. By September 1944, the Allies had swept across France and Belgium. The major port of Antwerp, crucial for supplying the final push into Germany, had been captured intact. Victory seemed just around the corner. But there was one massive, deadly problem. While the city of Antwerp was secure, the Germans still controlled the Scheldt estuary, the 50-mile-long waterway connecting the port to the North Sea. Without control of the estuary, not a single supply ship could reach the docks. This is where Montgomery made a fateful decision. Obsessed with his ambitious plan, Operation Market Garden, he diverted resources away from clearing the Scheldt. He believed a bold airborne assault to seize bridges over the Rhine would end the war by Christmas. The task of securing the estuary was handed over to the 1st Canadian Army, who were undermanned and exhausted. Montgomery saw it as a secondary minor operation. Couldn't have been more wrong. The battle for the Scheldt began in early October 1944. What unfolded was a nightmare. The landscape was a waterlogged maze of dikes, canals, and flooded fields, perfect defensive terrain. The Canadians, along with British, Polish, and other Allied units, faced deeply entrenched, fanatical German defenders. They weren't just second-rate troops, these were battle-hardened veterans determined to fight to the last man. Progress was measured in yards, not miles, and came at a horrific cost. Soldiers fought in knee-deep mud and freezing water. They faced relentless machine gun fire, mortar, and booby traps. The fighting was brutal and personal. One of the most infamous parts of the campaign was the battle for the Breskens Pocket, a heavily fortified German position south of the estuary. Allied forces had to launch amphibious assaults across canals under withering fire, an operation so hazardous it was nicknamed the Water Rats War. Another critical phase was the fight for Walcheren Island, the heavily armed fortress guarding the mouth of the Scheldt. The Allies had to bomb the island's dikes, deliberately flooding it to isolate German positions. Then, commandos launched amphibious landings on the shores, fighting house to house in the flooded streets of towns like Vlissingen. The fighting was so intense that some historians have compared the casualty rates to those of the First World War. Finally, after 5 weeks of relentless, brutal combat, Odell, the Scheldt estuary, was cleared on November 8th. The human cost was staggering. The 1st Canadian Army suffered over 12,800 casualties, with nearly half of them being Canadian. These were men who had survived Normandy only to fall in the mud of the Scheldt. The first supply convoy didn't reach Antwerp until November 28th, almost 3 months after the port was captured. So why did Montgomery want this battle forgotten? It was a glaring stain on his reputation. His focus on the gamble of Market Garden, which ultimately failed, directly led to the prolonged and bloody fight for the Scheldt. The delay in opening Antwerp created a severe supply crisis that stalled the entire Allied advance and arguably prolonged the war into 1945. For a commander who carefully cultivated an image of flawless planning, the Scheldt was a catastrophic miscalculation he preferred to sweep under the rug. In his memoirs, he barely gave it a mention. But the sacrifice of those soldiers should never be forgotten. The Battle of the Scheldt was one of the most difficult and vital campaigns of the war. It was a testament to the incredible courage and resilience of the men who fought and died in the worst possible conditions to open the lifeline that fueled the final victory. Thanks for watching. If you found this story fascinating, please hit that like button, subscribe to War Echoes Explained, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into the hidden corners of history. See you next time.